So I actually really am excited to be here. I'm here because last year our team ported our entire code base on a new app to Dart, and I'll be telling you a little bit about that. And it's been a really positive experience. And reflecting back on that experience and kind of looking back over the last year, we're very convinced that Dart's a great choice for teams and for groups of teams building complicated web apps. And we also believe in the Dart's mission to make the web an even better place to build those web apps. So the title of this talk is Switching to Dart. I'm John. I like to climb rocks when I'm not writing software. This is in Snow Canyon, St. George. So this is a timeline of kind of our project. We kind of started prototyping things a year ago. We formed a product team in May. We switched to Dart last October after using a bunch of tools in JavaScript. And we shipped earlier this year. We're very happy about that, and we're getting a lot of good feedback from internal and external customers already. And immediately after switching, we had a lot of advantages. We were just getting a lot of development advantages. So getting new engineers on the team really sped up. It only took about 1 or 2 days for the 3 engineers we had to start shipping code for our app, and that was really great. We think the developer experience is much, much better than what we were doing before. We focus a lot less on our tools, a lot less. And we find code a lot easier to share among teams using Pub and all the features that are available there. Does anybody know what this chart is? Any chance? Yep. It's for climbing. So it's the Yosemite decimal system. And all these climbs are graded on kind of their hardest move. And some climbs are multi-pitch, so you might have one section that's considered 5.9 and one that's 5.11. And this is just North America, so if you're from Aarhus, it would be different. But the reason I'm showing you this is I think software and climbing have a lot in common. I think they're fundamentally about problem solving. In fact, certain climbs are called problems, they're called bouldering problems. And when you're solving problems and you're seeing some improvement in what you're working on or in what your team is working on, it's going to be a lot more fun. And we think that this starts a cycle. And the more fun you have, the more you want to solve more problems. And if you expand this to the team, I think it makes for a good work environment. And I think using good tools is like using good climbing technique. And that's what we want for our engineers. So I'll talk about who we are. I'll talk briefly about why we kind of evaluated Dart and switched to Dart. Very briefly, I'll talk about how we did it and some of the tools that were available to make that process easier. And a little bit about what we are doing today and how we're using the tools today. So we make Wdesk, and Wdesk is a complex business reporting application. And what that means is a lot of companies use our application for documents, presentations, charts, mobile apps, and they use our full suite of apps for this specific use case. And we're able to kind of customize our software for them because we deploy to the web, and we get a lot of feedback from them really quickly. We can deliver features multiple times a day and fix bugs and get feedback really quickly. And we have over 65% of the Fortune 500 using our product, and that's really exciting. And this is what we kind of attribute it to. I think it's this build, measure, learn loop. It's kind of our way of getting feedback from customers. And I think in the Dart project also kind of wants this too. And so if we can give a lot of feedback to the Dart project while we're here, I think they'll be able to take that back and build better stuff for us. And that's kind of what we do, and that's what we're about. So why did we switch to Dart? Well, we primarily build large-scale apps. We were using JavaScript tools, and we found them very difficult to compose together and get working together in a nice package. And when we evaluated Dart, it was a complete solution for us. So I mentioned we build large-scale applications. We built Wdesk in ActionScript starting 5 years ago. And it gave us a lot of benefits. It's a really scalable language. It has type information. It's got build tools in place for you. When you're navigating code, that works really well. And JetBrains has done a great job over the last 5 years working on action script and getting that support in place. And the libraries and frameworks are there too. And so this is probably sounding familiar to you, language tools and libraries. And it just allowed us to build Wdesk. And I don't think we would have built the same product had we have immediately gone to HTML5. But there's some problems with our current application. It's over 1 million lines of code, and it takes 2 to 8 minutes to compile it, and that's not a great developer experience. So for our new products, starting last year and before that, we were targeting the web and trying to make new apps that kind of solve this problem. But the problem with JavaScript is decision making. We had to decide whether we're using internal, external modules, AMD, or CommonJS, what kind of package manager we're going to use. Each of these arrows is where we kind of changed our mind. Bundler, you have to have a bundler to produce, a compiled JavaScript output. And you have to have a build and test framework. And you have to glue all these pieces together and hope that something good comes out. But after all that work, we evaluated Dart and found it to be a complete solution. So you have the great developer experience. And when we were evaluating, we knew we could work with existing JavaScript libraries, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And there's a good testing story around Dart, and it's getting even better with the new test package. So we're really excited about this, and when we evaluated this, this was really compelling. So how did we switch? Well, that's why we switched. But how did we switch? So I'll talk quickly about our strategy for switching. I'll talk about React components. There's been a lot of interest in React and why that helped us switch, and how we switched our unit test over. So our strategy was, we had 4 developers at the time. We had a medium-sized code base, maybe a small code base, 13,000 lines of code. It's not a small amount of code, 153 files, and it only took us about a week. So there's a lot of reasons for this, and I'll get into that, but I think it's really cool that you can take an app you've been working on for 5 months and just switch it to Dart. And we actually shaved a lot of lines off our code because of Dart's package system and how clean that is versus JavaScript's module system. So our strategy kind of looked like this. We didn't really focus on writing idiomatic Dart code at first. We just kind of wanted to get it working and switch it over. And then maybe in the weeks after we got our working app, we could kind of make the code more idiomatic. So for example, we weren't using RxJS for kind of these tooling reasons I was mentioning, but we did want kind of a stream-based model. So we wanted to be able to subscribe to some events and maybe receive errors. And then, so here I'm calling subscribe to model at the bottom. And when we ported this to Dart, we really didn't focus on changing this. We just got the code running the same way it was running in JavaScript, and we were done. And then later, it's really exciting, and it's actually a lot of fun to refactor the code and make it more idiomatic. So you can see we're just using a stream here, and we keep a stream controller on our class called thing, and it's a lot cleaner. And plus, you get all the advantages of the stream class. React components were another thing it was a challenge for us, and we weren't sure how this was going to work. But so for those who aren't familiar, this is a React component. It's really simple. It's written in JSX, which is a little controversial because you're inlining XML into JavaScript and then compiling that into JavaScript. But it's actually pretty simple to use, and we like it. So we had a lot of components written in React. And when this compiles, it looks something like this, where the div element has no properties, so we give it null, and then we say hello name. So when we ported this, there's this library called React Dart, and it allows you to write normal Dart classes and use the inheritance model extend component. And here we're using some string interpolation, and yeah, and it worked really well. We have an engineer here, Trent, who's going to be giving a lightning talk about React if you're interested in this binding. And if you're interested in how this works, you can check here. So that was the React components, and we got those ported over using kind of that strategy. And the final thing we did was port our tests. And the Angular team has written this library called Guinness. So I'm going to kind of go back and forth here between Jasmine and Guinness. Boom, boom, boom. So that's how we switched. We took a strategy of just moving the code over and then improving it after move and improve. Yeah. Uh, trademark. React components were able to be switched using React.Dart, and then using the Guinness package, we switched our apps. And now we're using unit tests, but having that initial port go smoothly was important to us. So I'm going to talk a little bit, spend the rest of the time talking about what we do now and how we're using the tools today. And we're seeing a lot of awesome stuff happening in a lot of these, especially testing. So this is really exciting to talk about. But the Dart VM just immediately gave us a great development experience. I don't think I'll get any controversy saying this here. Debugging is just really fast and predictable for us. We use the IDE WebStorm, and we're able to debug remote apps and debug apps locally using, just right in the source code, and that's really great. I'll talk a little bit about this on the next slide, but switching branches is really important to us because we review code, and keeping a pub server running and switching branches is a great developer experience. Check mode is also really nice for us. Being able to put asserts in our code and have those type checks makes you understand the bugs much quicker. And I have a quick example here of something I think is cool. So I know there's a question about using a REPL in Dart. So this is something that you can do if you set a breakpoint. You can just start, open up the console and just play with different frames. You hear I selected the package I wanted to kind of play with, and I'm typing in a string, and it's going to parse it for me. I'm a really fast typer, as you can see. So there we go. It's going to parse that for us. Cool. So switching branches is much cheaper, and this is important because we like to test each other's code, and we like to really quickly get feedback on each other's code. So we pushed to GitHub, we set up a pull request, and this was the old workflow where we had to commit our working changes, compile and serve the application, and that took, in JavaScript, that took 10 to 12 seconds. We had a medium-sized app. Then we review and test the code like normal. And then when we're done, we have to go back to our old branch we were working on and check out our working changes, and then compile and serve to get back running again. So there's kind of a mental block here. It's kind of not fun to, maybe I'll pull down this code, but maybe I'll just keep working on what I'm working on. But with Dart, you just keep the pub server running, and you can eliminate those compile steps. So I know for me, it's a lot less of a mental block to just play with each other's code. I think pub is awesome, and we have found that it's allowed us to share code a lot more and more easily. So we kind of have this notion of writing code as classes and functions and not really knowing what the future of those will be. And over time, we say, well, we can abstract this into a library and declare what other libraries and imports. And then in the same repo, because pub has package dependency or path dependency support, we can kind of put that into a package in our same repository, keep the code reviews in the same place, and then eventually separate it into a repo. And then we open sourced our first Dart repo the other day. So just a really good story around kind of how flexible pub makes writing packages. There's a really clear structure for pub packages, so they're actually analyzable. So I'm not saying this is clear structure, but this is our dependency for our package right now. And Kevin made this. It's really awesome. Very clear. Very the tool. Yeah, it's yeah. That's our code. That's the mess. So the Git versus private pub server is one issue where I think would be cool to improve. So there is a private pub server if you're a company or your team. You can host this on App Engine and eventually just on your own server and kind of share your code that way. And what that gives you is path constraint solving for your package. One other cool thing that might work would be to use Git tags for path or constraint solving. So if everyone wants to get out their laptop and vote for issue 22481, I will stand here, I'll wait. Well played. But seriously though, I think having a team dedicated and responding to issues quickly is really cool. And we get that for free from you guys. Thanks. So we bind to JavaScript. We do this through the React binding we use. And we just do it for existing libraries that we have and we haven't ported yet. The first choice should be to port to Dart, but if you can't, you can use this. So here, I have a class. I'm using this promise object. So I'm getting the Quokka promise object from our JavaScript context. And what that looks like is something like this. So we can actually wrap, we're wrapping promises and stuff for simple libraries like that. And we're just using Dart.js right now. There's a problem that we have been seeing with binding to JavaScript. So here, if you pass a function over to JavaScript, they're not equal. And I think this isn't a huge problem because you can do something like set timeout does, which is return an ID for that listener, and then you can clean those listeners up yourself. But I think with the stuff that's coming out, I think this will improve. So that's kind of how we bind to JS. It's worked really well for us for the libraries that we have, and it's only going to get better. We have a story around CI that looks kind of like this. We push to GitHub, our CI server. It's an internal CI tool that we have. Pulls down our code, and then it grabs the Dart Docker container from our Docker registry, and then runs our tests using that Docker container. Travis CI, there's support for Travis CI on their site for Dart now. But if you want to do this and get a green check mark, you can. There's lots of Docker files available. So if you have some base Docker image and you want to get your tests and stuff running on that Docker image, you can download the base Docker image that is shipped with the Dart team by the Dart team, and then use that. Or you can kind of look at one of these Docker files if you're interested in how that works. That worked pretty nicely for us. One of the final things I'm going to talk about is our testing story and something we think is cool. We think WebDriver is really a nice tool for running automated browser tests. So what WebDriver allows you to do is actually automate real browser interactions that a user might do, click buttons, and do all that sorts of thing. So it's a project by the Selenium. It's part of the Selenium project. And there's multiple languages supported, and one of them is Dart. So I'll show you an example of a Python test here. This is a synchronous test, so each line actually blocks. So there's a few advantages to writing these in Python because you have some interactivity with clicking through the browser and using the API. But when we switched to JavaScript a year ago for our project, we wanted to kind of write our tests in the same language. And this was actually harder to debug, and we had some problems just getting our WebDriver client to be readable and understandable. So when we switched to Dart, we used, at the time, the Dart async package. We used features. And you can write something like this, where you're getting the URL, you're finding the element that you want to click on, and then you click on it, set the text, and check the text that is what you expect. But I remember the first time I saw async await was with our tests because it was a preview, and we could run our tests using whatever we wanted. And yeah, I knew it was a feature that we were going to really love and start using. So that's WebDriver. And the advantage to writing WebDriver tests in the same language is that you get the full power of the Dart language. You get anything you would normally use when you're writing code. And we found that our quality assurance engineers and our developers can collaborate and review each other's code. And that's been really positive for us. So that's kind of what we do now. We use the Dart VM, and all the developer tools give us a great developer experience. Pub allows us to share code really easily. We're still able to use JavaScript in a way that's sane and makes sense to us. And we have a great testing story, and the testing story is only getting better. So we're really excited for 2015. So switching to Dart has allowed us, I think, to build, measure, and learn more quickly, get features out quicker, get feedback. It's a better developer experience, and having more fun as a developer means you're working harder, you're getting better, and that's what you want, just like climbing. We focus a lot less on tools, so it's like climbing more efficiently. when you're not messing around with your harness, for example. And code is much easier to share between teams. And overall, I think it's the #1 thing we've done to be more productive. So looking forward, I think there's some cool things that we're excited about. This notion of libraries that are platform independent, like the HTTP package, really exciting stuff because you can write a library like a GitHub API, run it on the server or the client. And you can also, Dan Schultz has an example of rendering React components on the client or the server as well. So that's something we're looking into and getting really excited about. So we're here. We've completed, kind of our first pitch. We've been working for a year, and we have shipped our product, and we feel like we've climbed this last section much more efficiently. And when you climb more efficiently, you usually have the stamina to kind of look up and keep going. So that's my talk. If anybody has any questions, I'll be here. We have a lot of Workiva engineers here, and we're just really glad to be here. It's great to see all you guys. Thanks.
Bob, I don't know about you, but I want to have the Workiva guys just always give our pitch. Like,
yeah.
Why are we here? Jeez. Actually, no. Stick around though, because you
have time for questions.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure.
Guess what?
Any questions for John?
Back here, I'll run.
Yeah. So is Wdesk hosted? Do you do any actual content hosting on your side, or do they run it in inter-office?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We've been using App Engine for a long time to host our product, and App Engine is a great tool. We're still using it today a lot, and I think we're a really large App Engine customer. And now we can run Dart on App Engine. We're looking into that, and that's exciting as well.
Anyone else?
Yvonne, oh no.
So I had a question about the million lines of ActionScript code. When are you switching those? And how would you go about that?
A million lines of ActionScript code. I think our strategy going forward is we're building new products in Dart, and I don't see our current ActionScript code base moving very quickly. But it's actually a great reference for any new features we're implementing because we can go back and I think ActionScript translates to Dart pretty well in terms of how the languages are structured. And Dart is just a very it's a language that a lot of languages are like. It's a C family language, and so it's not like we're translating a whole bunch of different concepts. So.
How many lines of Haskell do you have to translate?
0. Yeah.
Anyone else? You have a live, large-scale Dart user here.
Oh.
Pick their brain.
Yeah.
What did you use for the UI framework? Did you pick anything like Dart or Polymer or anything for the UI, or just straight Dart HTML?
Yeah, Trent's going to be giving a lightning talk about a little bit more about that. We're using React for most of our components, and in some places we just use Dart HTML directly, but yeah.
I got time for one more, maybe? One more? Going once? Going twice?
Yeah. We are using App Engine. Yeah, we've been using it for a long time.
The question was, are you using App Engine? Sorry.
Yeah.
Thanks for the clarification.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks.